Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Strategic Plan Town Hall. My name is Michael Wright. I'm the Vice President for Communications and the Chief of Staff. I will be your MC today, and we'll be joined by some others, by President Wilson, Governor Kelly, and by Provost Claybo. We have between 500 and 600 people on the call today, so welcome to all of you. I also understand we have a member of our board, at least one member of our board that has joined us, Governor Land. So welcome, Governor Land. Thank you for joining us for this call. The purpose of today is to launch the process for our next 5-year strategic plan. 2021 is the final year of our distinctively Wayne State plan. So we're beginning the development of a plan for 2022 through 2027. So the format for today is real easy. We're going to have a little bit of background and discussion from first President Wilson, then Governor Kelly, chair of our board of governors, then by Provost Lori Claybo and we're going to talk about the process. We'll talk about how we've done so far with our 5-year plan that's being wound up this year. So I think it'll be a very informative information for all of you. We will have Q&A at the end. And we've had some questions that have already come in through us, but in the chat, if you have a question, feel free to place it in there. We're not going to be spending time talking about the fall, which I know we have a lot of questions on, but next month, we will have a town hall specifically on what the fall semester is going to look like. So without further ado, let me introduce President Wilson.
Thank you, Michael. Let me just add my welcome to all of you who's listening in. Before I start, let me also thank Michael Wright for his role in the 2016 to 2021 strategic plan. He led that process. And I think that it's fair to say that strategic plan really did have an impact on our university. Unlike many strategic plans, and I've been involved with a lot of strategic plans in my career, we really were guided by this one to an unusual degree. We spent a lot of time dealing with the mission and the values. We spent a lot of time talking about both the challenges and the opportunities. And we set clear goals. And we did attain many of those, not all, but we certainly attained many of them. For example, we did hit our main goal of increase on graduation rate, 6-year graduation rate to 50%. We're at about 52% now. That was an important one. We also tripled our Black graduation rate, which was also very, very important. We exceeded our Pivotal Moments campaign goal of $750 million. We exceeded it, and we were early in hitting our goal. We still have a little bit of time left, and we're almost certain that we'll hit our goal of increasing our endowment to $500 million. So that would be an important milestone for us. We created the Office of Multicultural Student Engagement, otherwise known as OMSE, and we continue to make investments in OMSE. We created innovative financial programs that help opportunities for students and help success for our students. For example, the Heart of Detroit Warrior Way Back program, both of these have gained national attention and copied by other universities, but most importantly, they've helped a lot of students, brand new students, as well as those students who are already here, in helping them to achieve their dreams. We did complete and are beginning to implement a new campus master plan. Very importantly, we strengthened our reputation in the community through additional outreach and communications. And we increased our research awards and our expenditures. This is a lot, and we are proud of the things that we did achieve. We didn't accomplish everything we set out to do. We still have some things that we'll probably have to roll over to the next strategic plan, but there are certain opportunities to do that. Certainly in terms of things that we didn't accomplish, but which is really important and which we must continue to make progress on, is closing the the graduation gap between Black students and white students. The gap is still very, very wide, and it's just not acceptable. But we're improving, and the reason why we haven't been able to close that gap is actually because all students have improved in terms of their graduation. At some point, there will be a plateauing of a student group, the majority students, and Black students will be able to hopefully catch up. The next strategic plan is going to have to really set some very realistic but aggressive goals in terms of how we're going to make progress on reducing and ultimately eliminating that graduation gap. The other thing that the other goal that we didn't hit was the enrollment goal of 30,000. That was a very aggressive goal, and we did have some bright spots. For example, our FIDIAC, our freshman student enrollment increased a lot over this time period. In fact, during the last 3 years, where we had the largest freshman classes in the history of the university the last 3 years. And so there were certainly some bright spots, but we weren't able to reach our overall goal of 30,000 for a number of reasons, one of which is our enrollment of international students certainly tanked, as happened at many universities. But also that was a very aggressive goal, particularly when you take into account that students were graduating faster. So not a lot of students were sticking around for their 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th years. And so that also was a factor. But the next strategic plan is going to have to really consider what our optimal size is going to be. And it may not be just in relation to a number of traditional students, but may involve different offerings and different types of students to deal with the post-pandemic needs. And I'll talk about that a little bit in a second. But that's what a good plan should do is you achieve some things and you learn from other things. Certainly one of the things that we did not anticipate at all was the pandemic. We had to react very quickly to the pandemic, which we did. All of higher ed had to react in a way that was unanticipated to deal with the pandemic. But certainly that offers some opportunities moving forward in terms of what is the post-pandemic university going to look like. I'm pretty sure that the post-pandemic university is not going to be the same as pre-pandemic. We were not, out of any fault of our own, we were a bit unprepared for the devastation of the pandemic. We need to make sure that we're better prepared next time, and all of higher ed needs to be better prepared. These viruses have a periodicity to them. When you think about SARS was identified in about 2002, the MERS, the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, was about 2011 or so, 9 or 10 years after SARS. And then, COVID-2 is COVID-19, I'm sorry, SARS-CoV-2 was 2020, let's say. So there's a periodicity to it, and we need to be prepared for the next pandemic in a way that higher ed just wasn't, and prepared both in terms of our responses immediately, but also prepared in terms of what the academic offerings are going to be. And that's what I mean by a post-pandemic university. A lot of things, worked well in terms of our development of our last plan. We want to continue to do those things that worked well. Everybody really understood the mission of the university. You might remember that the Higher Learning Commission visited us right after the completion of our strategic plan. And they commented about how it seemed like everyone at Wayne State really understood the mission, and that is important. So we'll continue to start there and make sure that we communicate with everyone. I think that we focused in the right strategic areas, and we'll take another look at those. But I think the areas that we focused on were the right areas. We try to communicate the plan as often as possible to the entire organization. We tracked our progress. We had a thorough and inclusive process. And a big part of that process was the Board of Governors, who provided strategic input to help guide our planning. And we did the same thing this time to develop our new plan. We began with a conversation with the board in a 2-day retreat, and to talk further about our board involvement thus far and moving forward. I'd like to introduce my co-host of this event, the chair of Wayne State's Board of Governors, Marilyn Kelly. Governor Kelly.
Thank you, President Wilson. I'm pleased to co-host this town hall with you and to discuss our very important strategic plan initiative. And welcome to all of you who are listening. Thank you for joining us today. A key responsibility of the Board of Governors is to determine the strategic direction of the university. And since, as you know, our current strategic plan is expiring, the board convened in early March to discuss how to go about developing a new plan. As you heard, the plan will cover the years 2022 to 2027. During those 2 days of meetings, the board talked about the importance of having a solid plan. We looked at examples of other states' plans and at trends in higher education. We agreed upon a process to create Wayne's new plan. We had the expert guidance of a higher education consultant from the Association of Governing Boards, Carol Cartwright, who was President Emeritus of Kent State and Bowling Green Universities. So we began our work where it is best to begin, as President Wilson recommended, with our mission statement, our vision, and our values. Wayne State's mission is strong. Our vision is strong too, but we agreed to a small change in it to focus it more globally. So we added a value also to our list of values. Values are something overlooked. They're critical to serving our mission and accomplishing the goals of any strategic plan. They guide us, what we strive for, our expectations, how we act and work together. Our values tell us how we go about getting things done. Currently, our values are excellence, integrity, innovation, collaboration, and diversity and inclusion. The board decided to add another, leadership. This relates to Wayne State's leadership role in Detroit. We're proud of our long history as an anchor institution in the city, and we will continue to assist to play a lead role in the city's resurgence. Of course, leadership is a value we hope is embraced by people throughout the university, no matter their title or their role. During the 2-day retreat, the board spent a lot of time discussing what should be the areas of focus of the new plan. Our exchanges were robust and collaborative, and I think the recommendations we arrived at are well-based and forward-looking. Let me talk a little about them. Many of the key focus areas we identified mirror those in our current strategic plan, and we feel that's fitting. It goes without saying that we want other areas to be considered as well. Among the areas the board identified as important for planning purposes are student success, retention, and completion. In recent years, we've succeeded, as the president said, in making improvements in these areas so vital to our mission. We must continue to focus on them. Teaching excellence is another focus area. As someone who teaches in our law school, I have a special respect for our professors and the work they do. This past year has been a frustrating one to teach in. Our faculty were heroic in their response to the institutional challenges the pandemic forced upon us. The new strategic plan needs to provide innovative models of training for new or different audiences, as well as encourage benefiting from techniques learned during the pandemic. Financial stability is a focus area. We must bolster existing and uncover new sources of revenue for the university. We must exercise renewed vigor in meeting our capital and infrastructure needs. Wayne State has a new campus master plan, but we must ensure that it continues to be the right approach for us after what we've learned about remote work and education during the pandemic. Enrollment is another focus area. We did not hit our goal under the existing plan. We must not quit trying. We must also ask how to view our enrollment goals in light of demographic trends and learnings arising from our wrestling match with the pandemic. Without doubt, a strong enrollment will continue to be vital to the well-being of the university. Graduate education. A graduate degree is a key to personal prosperity. It enlarges our students' vocational opportunities. Wayne has great graduate programs, but we have to build on them. We are a research university. This enables us to attain special learning and heightened excellence, distinguishing us from other universities. Research will continue to be one of our focus areas. In matters of diversity, equity, and inclusion, we have advanced, but we're not satisfied. The recently completed Social Justice Section Committee report, which the President shared with us, provides superb input for the new plan. Detroit is our home. We want to continue to focus on improving our local reputation through community engagement. We want to also find ways to gain national recognition that Wayne State deserves. So community engagement and national recognition are focal points. That touches on the highlights of the Board of Governors list of strategic focus interests. We'll turn that list over to the Strategic Plan Steering Committee, and this committee will consist of people from all across the campus, and it will be charged with developing the new plan. I'll be pleased to represent the Board of Governors on the committee. One of the committee's co-chairs will be Interim Provost Lori Clabo, and she'll be joined in July by our new provost, Mark Kornblue. So now it's my pleasure to turn the program over to Provost Clabo to share a bit about the process that will be used in developing the strategic plan. Provost Clabo?
Thank you, Governor Kelly. I'm honored to serve as co-chair of the steering committee, and I'm anxious to roll up my sleeves and begin working with my colleagues and all of you on the development of the plan. Joining me as co-chairs of this committee are Steve Lanier, our Vice President for Research, and Michael Wright, Vice President for Communications and Chief of Staff. And as Governor Kelly mentioned, our new provost, Dr. Mark Kornblue, will also join us when he arrives in July. The full steering committee consists of 20 members of the campus community. It represents a diverse group of students, faculty, and administrators in key positions. I won't read the list right now, but it will be added to our strategic plan website, which is located at president.wayne.edu/strategic-plan. We'll also be joined in this important work by a consultant with expertise in higher ed strategic planning from a company called MGT Consulting. Our first phase of the planning process is really setting our foundation by gathering and analyzing input from a variety of sources. We have a lot of information already to start with, including input from the board, the Social Justice Action Committee report that Governor Kelly mentioned, competitive information, and more. But we also want to provide an opportunity for input from all of us across campus, as well as alumni and our surrounding community. We will have a number of focus groups where students, faculty, alumni, and others can share input, and we will also have a form on the strategic plan website where you can add your thoughts. We will keep this form open throughout the process. Beginning tomorrow morning, we'll also field a survey for students, faculty, and staff. Please take a couple of minutes and fill the survey out. It will really be an important contribution to helping us plan the future. We think this input and analysis phase will take a couple of months, after which we'll begin to develop the actual plan itself. All of the data and input we receive will help us to get a picture of our strengths, our weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges we face, from which we can develop the goals and objectives of our next strategic plan. The process is going to be an iterative one of discussion, sharing, testing our hypotheses, and reaching consensus. We anticipate that it will take us throughout this summer and into late fall, and we'll be sharing our progress with the Board of Governors as we proceed. Once we have an approved plan, we will begin to communicate it broadly and deeply throughout the organization. We'll also share our plan with the community as we are so intertwined, and our mutual success depends on our mutual understanding. Then we'll implement the plan and start the process of measuring our progress against our goals and objectives. So this is really a snapshot of a process which will involve hundreds of people over the remainder of this year. It's a lot of work, but it's collaborative work, and it is critically important. And your participation in this process is important. You each have a role to play. So thank you for being here, and thank you in advance for your participation in this very important process. I'd like to now turn this back to Michael Wright, who will field questions.
Thank you, Provost Claybo and President Wilson and Governor Kelly. We have not had any questions come in through the chat, but we have had questions filter into us from other means, and some of them are I can distribute among our participants. The first question was about the pandemic and how it might change the way Wayne State operates. How will it change us strategically? And I think I would ask President Wilson to talk a little bit about that first, and then Provost Claybo.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. When you really think about it, what an exciting time to begin a strategic planning process. Right as we're exiting a once in a generation, once in 100-year kind of pandemic that has such an effect on higher education. As I mentioned already, the post-pandemic university is going to be different than pre-pandemic, or it should be. And we certainly are going to make sure we are different. And to think about what those differences are and how we can work better, take the things that we've learned from the pandemic, things that we were thrust into, the kind of remote teaching that people have become much more comfortable with, as well as having meetings and having town halls like this and involving so many more people than we were able to previously. All the different opportunities that the pandemic has opened up in terms of doing things differently and serving different students. I just think it is just an exciting time to think about these things and to develop a strategic plan that is responsive to all of these issues that I just mentioned. So I'll leave it there, and maybe the provost may have some thoughts.
So I would support what President Wilson said. And as we think about the pandemic changing the way we deliver education, there will be lots of learnings for us moving forward. And many people are talking about some flexibility in course delivery, moving from sessions that are in person to synchronous to asynchronous to things like high flex education. It may also change the way we design some of the spaces in which we work as we move to a more frequently remote work environment. There'll certainly be opportunities to think about what our campus looks like in its physical presence, as well as the way we do our work on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you, Provost Claybo. We just had a question come in from the chat about the CARES funding and how and what we are spending CARES funding on. I think President Wilson, that might be one you want to field and call on others as necessary.
I'm sorry, Mike. What was the question?
Yeah, it was about CARES funding, how Wayne State is spending the CARES funding that it's getting.
Yeah. So, there were different tranches of funding. Some of the early funding were very restricted in terms of how it could be used. The most recent funds from the President Biden's stimulus funds are a bit more flexible and can be used in ways that could be budget relieving for us. As was done with the first couple of tranches, that was more restrictive. We'll undergo a thorough analysis of how these funds can be spent. Some of it has to go directly to students, so we'll make sure that that happens, and then the rest we'll try to use it in the way that is in the best for the university. We don't have specifics yet because we're still studying the allowable uses at this time, and there's still some details to be worked out in those areas. But the fact that they are much more flexible than the first tranche is going to be very helpful to us. And I don't think there's much more to say about that because we just don't have any more details than that at this point.
And we'll be talking more about the pandemic and the things around it next month as well. If you could stay on, President Wilson, there's an interesting strategic question. It's about other universities moving into the neighborhood and setting up shop. And that's Detroit went from being an unpopular place while we were here into being a very popular place for other universities. And how do we strategically, I guess, address other universities who are moving into Detroit?
Yeah. My feeling on that is that, obviously that is something that's happening, but we shouldn't really focus on what other universities do. We should focus on what we do and make sure that what we do is the absolute best, and let things fall the way they may. If we focus on ourselves and what we do, and make sure that we continue to treat Detroit as our home, as our partner, since we have since 1868, then regardless of what other universities do or may not do, we will continue to be Detroit's university. So, I just don't really think that we should focus so much on what other universities are doing. I mean, there are our partner universities, particularly University of Michigan and Michigan State. We'll do some things with them. We'll do some things by ourselves. We'll partner with them as appropriate. And we'll just continue to focus on the things we do and continue to make inroads with the community and continue to serve the communities in the way we have been serving, and just make sure that we're the best university we can be.
Thank you very much. If I could ask Provost Claybo, there was a question: how will we ensure that faculty input is included in the development of the plan?
So faculty input is obviously crucial to the development of our next strategic plan. On the steering committee itself, we will have 2 members of the Academic Senate, as well as 2 other faculty members representing faculty. We'll also have at least 1 dedicated focus group of faculty to gather input, and we'll have faculty placed on relevant subcommittees that will do work throughout the course of the development of the plan. And of course, again, everyone's input, including faculty input, is strongly encouraged through the survey regarding the strategic plan that will go out tomorrow morning.
Thank you very much. This next question will be for President Wilson. How did we decide who would be on the steering committee for the strategic plan?
I don't know, Michael. You might remember that more than me. I do know that we came up with a list, and we had the board review it and make sure that there was input from them. And then once that was done, then we finalized it. You want to answer that question, Michael?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we looked at the list of people who participated in 2016 and looked at where people needed, what sort of expertise did we need around the table. And we've tried to put together a diverse a group as we could, diverse from both expertise, time, tenure on campus, and race, gender, etc. So then we put that group together. We spoke with the board at the retreat, and they reviewed it, and we've supplemented it a little bit based on their input and the needs that we have. The good thing about the strategic plan, it's not the be-all, end-all place. There will be subcommittees on the various focus areas, which will allow us to pull expertise from all around campus and the community to make sure that we've got a full participation in the creation of the plan.
Thanks, Michael. I just couldn't remember exactly how we did it.
Well, why don't you stay right there, because the question is, how is this plan going to be different from the last plan?
Yeah, I think that higher ed in general is just at a more dynamic time in its history. And so that means in Wayne State also, there's just a lot going on. Social justice issues, the issues that's brought up by the pandemic, issues with the climate study that we did. So it's just a very dynamic time. And I think that the new plan is going to reflect that dynamism, and I hope it reflects what I mentioned earlier, this sense of excitement at something that's going to be new. I mean, what better opportunity than right after the pandemic to really think deeply about our university and about higher ed and about how we can serve more students better. I just think it's an opportune time, and so it's this sense of dynamism, I think, that's different just in the environment right now, which is going to translate into a really dynamic strategic plan.
Thank you. May I have Governor Kelly, please? It was about the board, and you've spoken to this, but just maybe to reiterate, what will the board's role be in developing the strategic plan?
Well, as you heard, we started out with a 2-day retreat where we went over objectives and process and got in our 2 cents worth in terms of what we thought should be the most likely focus areas. And then I'm going to continue on in the main steering committee. Other members of the board may very likely take part in committees out of interest to hear the input that others have on this plan. Periodically, the board will ask for reports on the status of the development of the plan. And of course, at the very end, it's up to the board to approve, to make the ultimate approval of the plan, which we hope to do before the end of the year.
Thank you, Governor. We have a question from the chat. How will Wayne State address climate change and campus sustainability? And I'd like to bring the president up one more time for this, but before you speak, that a lot of these things remain to be seen. Part of the process will be finding out what are those things that are important and how do we address them. We did have sustainability included in the last plan, and we had a group put together to address that. As far as the future goes, it's something we'll have to look into, but President Wilson, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is that, we really have a great group of students, and particularly our student senate is just phenomenal. And this is an issue that they've been thinking about. They've been pushing the university to do more in this area of climate change. They spearheaded some initiatives, which some of which, or at least one of which, is going to come up at the next board meeting that I'm aware of. So our students are really keyed in on this whole topic of sustainability and climate change and what their role is in mitigating it. And so it'll certainly be a part of the next strategic plan. And I personally think that, given the activism of our students in this area, that it will have a much more prominent part of our strategic plan than in our last strategic plan. Even though it was there in our last strategic plan, I just have a feeling that, based on what I've seen so far from the students, that this will be, really just a focal point in a way that the last strategic plan was not.
Okay, we have had a few questions come in that are probably best kept until we have our town hall on the fall. They're about vaccinations, requirements, various things like that. If I could just ask the folks to hold those. In May, we're going to have a full town hall dedicated to this. And we have not had any other questions about the strategic plan come in through the chat. So I think that with a few comments, we can wrap this up. I will just add my thanks for the participation. The website, president.wayne.edu/strategic-plan, which is up there. Note that, because that'll be an opportunity to both see some of the documents that we're working that have been put up, as well as add your participation into the strategic plan. We're going to have the survey coming out tomorrow, and I will now turn it back over to President Wilson if you have any closing remarks, or to Governor Kelly to follow.
Not really. I mean, I'm just looking forward to us getting started. I appreciate the board taking such a leadership role in this. They were part of it in the last strategic plan, but they're really taking a more of a leadership role in this strategic plan. I think that's great. And I'm just looking forward to working with them and working with the university community in developing, what I hope will be, and what I'm sure is going to be, a really dynamic strategic plan.
Governor Kelly, as chair of our board, will give you the final comments and we'll close.
Okay. Well, I'll second what President Wilson said. And thank everybody for joining. Frankly, it's a delight for me to chair a board that's working so well together and so cooperatively with the administration in the best interest of this university. I think it portends an excellent strategic plan.
Thank you, Governor Kelly. Thank you all for participating. Thank you for joining us to the audience. Bye-bye now.